Thank you. So it is that when the time arrives to pass the torch to a new generation of patriotic Cuban Americans, we know it will remain firm and radiant in their hands. Please welcome an outstanding member of that new generation of hope, the chairman of the Cuban American National Foundation, Jorge Mas Santos.
Gracias. Thank you. Thank you, Pepe. Muchas gracias. To all of our distinguished guests, a mis compatriotas, Senator Obama, welcome to South Florida. South Florida, a cultural mosaic which personifies the greatness of the United States and home to citizens of different nations, creed, and color who struggle against tyranny, racism, and oppression, have left a permanent mark on our Miami as a depository of the most basic human instinct, freedom. As we commemorate Cuban Independence Day, I especially want to convey a special welcome from the Cuban American community. We, Senator, are a hardworking and proud community with a rich tradition based on the highest ideals of justice, liberty, the rule of law, and an unwavering faith in that our struggle for freedom and democracy is not measured in time, approaching a half-century now, but rather in our conviction that hope, democracy, and freedom will prevail over the oppressive regime which today enslaves the Cuban people. As my colleague said earlier, in every corner of the world, when given an opportunity, the Cuban exiles have been successful in multiple fields, unfortunately, except within our own country, Cuba, where the opportunity to succeed has been suffocated by a repressive regime. We, senators, stand before you today as the ultimate personification of the American dream. The Cuban American National Foundation is a product of that American dream, an institution created by exiles with a desire to protect the ideals of freedom and democracy, driven by the realization that a lack of strong institutions in 1959 facilitated the rise of power of Fidel Castro and his failed revolution. Our founders, many of whom are here today, created an institution that could look beyond our period in exile, an institution that would forever serve as a guardian of freedom so that future generations of Cubans would not be forced to live under tyranny. Senator, the work of the Cuban American National Foundation has not been limited to Cuba, however. Wherever fellow citizens have been deprived of their rights across the world, from the countries of Eastern Europe to the continent of Africa to the nations of Central and South America, the Cuban American National Foundation has stood alongside them. Our commitment to democracy goes beyond the borders of this nation and of Cuba. Our commitment extends to all citizens of the world we inhabit who are forced to live under repressive rule. The Cuban American National Foundation has and will continue to create a great legacy for generations to follow, a legacy begun by the work of Jorge Mas Santos, my father. You see, I too, Senator, have been shaped by the dreams of my father, a man who founded this institution so many years ago. He was a man of great virtue and commitment who believed in the purity of the human spirit and that freedom is an inalienable right endowed to us by our Creator. His life was dedicated to the cause of Cuba's freedom. His commitment, driven by a desire to inspire a younger generation to shed the fear imposed on them by Castro's ruthless regime, to empower them to bravely go forth. He and the founders of this institution understood that they could best serve this cause by elevating the discussion on Cuba from the streets of Miami to the halls of this great nation's capital. They took on the bold responsibility of conveying the hopes and aspirations of a nation in shackles and a people in exile torn from their land of birth. 27 years later, we see our tenacious efforts that resulted in the passing of landmark legislation that denied the Cuban regime resources, yet facilitated communication, information, and humanitarian aid to our brothers and sisters in Cuba. Cuba is no longer simply a subject discussed nostalgically at our kitchen tables. It is an issue that world leaders must address and debate, and that is because of the efforts of the directors of the Cuban American National Foundation. Our viability and longevity as an institution has come from our ability to adapt to the ever-changing political panorama. We have always been innovative and embraced change. When necessary, taking risk at the cost of being criticized because our ultimate reward, Cuba's freedom, is so great. In that pursuit, we have remained true to our legacy, constantly seeking to break new avenues that would lead us closer to achieving our dream. These decisions had not always been well received or popular, but the virtue that most distinguishes us as an institution is our fierce independence, our ability to criticize when necessary or praise when merited. Ladies and gentlemen, we at the Cuban American National Foundation will continue to provide leadership no matter the price. Because, as my father said, as Pepe said earlier, the Cuban American National Foundation is not partisan, it is patriotic. We're not Republican or Democrat. We are founded and conceived on defending the highest ideals of Cuba and the United States. I remember when the Cuban American National Foundation met with Boris Yeltsin in 1990. Many in our community thought we had abandoned our convictions. Yet years later, we are recognized for our efforts, which resulted in a massive scaling down of Soviet subsidies to the Cuban regime. In the early 1990s, when we began to assist Cuba's nascent dissident movement, we were told that we were aiding regime informants and agents, and today we see that these brave men and women are leading the charge of freedom, and this community has rallied around them. More recently, at the turn of this millennium, with sanctions firmly in place, the Cuban American National Foundation began efforts to focus the debate away from sanctions policy and engage in discussions on how to help bolster the work of Cuba's brave dissidents. We did not abandon our support for measures that deprive the repressive regime of resources, which we as an institution helped craft. Instead, we changed the debate on Cuba because we realized the urgency of the need on the ground. Cuba's opposition had bravery to spare, but they lacked even the most basic tools to carry out their work. We shifted the debate because our strategy now had to be focused in aiding their efforts, raising awareness to their plight to policymakers around the globe, and pushing for the U.S. to better reflect the growing need for outside support, a need that continues to center much of our work today. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will become increasingly important as events continue to evolve in a Cuba without Fidel Castro. When Fidel Castro disappeared from political life for over a year and a half ago, the expectation of many that democratic change would quickly follow dissipated.